So let's turn now to segment 2 of my study tonight, exploring the Shema, discussions on the issues of Trinity. And as I mentioned before, this is paper number 2, and we're in the section, the paper is entitled Yahweh and Yeshua. We're in part 27 of this particular study. So let's look at Dr. Branson's work and see how that there's a view that history has presented that is not very well known as monarchical Trinitarianism. I know these are fancy terminologies that perhaps many of us in Trinitarian circles have never really stopped and encountered or even been exposed to. But it's worth it for us to realize that let me try to kind of summarize what we're about to do in case you get lost in the journey. Dr. Bo Branson is going to remind us as modern Christians living in the 21st century, combating the Unitarian rhetoric and having to deal with all of the universalism and all of the secular humanism and all the skepticism when it comes to attacks on the Trinitarian doctrine. And there's a rise in attack and skepticism within Christian circles on Trinitarian theology and things like that. Dr. Bo Branson is going to remind us that history, if we go all the way back to the 1st and 2nd and 3rd and 4th and 5th centuries, the early Christians had their fair share of opposition. Those Trinitarian church fathers had their fair share of opposition to the Trinitarian theology as well, and they have already supplied us with a healthy amount of articulation when it comes to understanding the Trinity that unfortunately many modern Christians today are disconnected from. So Dr. Branson is going to remind us modern Christians that we are not without historical support or precedent, and we can gain the benefit of the research from the early 1st century, 2nd century, 3rd century, 4th century, 5th century debates. We can go back and look at some of what they went through already, and that way we don't always have to reinvent our own articulation. We can borrow some of the same language. And so that's what he means by an appeal to history. So let's get started in this particular section tonight. And I'll read down through this paragraph and through maybe the first 2 paragraphs of Dr. Branson, and then maybe we'll stop for tonight. Okay? All right. So this section is entitled, Is Yeshua God? An Appeal to History. These are my own notes. Lastly, before we go on to explore the scriptural basis for drawing Trinitarian theology from the actual pages of the Bible itself, let us see how another professionally trained analytic philosopher of Christian theology solves the logical problem of the Trinity using language that appeals to what he labels the historical approach. So remember, Dr. Bo Branson is also a trained philosopher, just like Tuggy, just like Anderson. And this is helpful because we've got to keep the opponents on the same, as it were, qualified level playing field. When you're talking about 2 people debating, it's helpful that they're both within the same field of study. And in this case, Tuggy versus Anderson or Tuggy versus Branson, they're all within the field of philosophical. They're both professors of philosophy, yet one is a Unitarian and one's a Trinitarian. That's the whole point we're trying to make. So let's look at Dr. Bo Branson's research. Dr. Bo Branson